We need to get the industry together to talk, at least on a general level. What does a supplier do, right? What assets and what knowledge are they sitting on? Because we do R&D here. You just saw our new laboratory, right? And the other suppliers, they also have laboratories. Something is coming out of all that if you put the pieces together, likely are quite helpful pieces of the complete puzzle. We want to help to lay the puzzle in a little bit more of a collaborative way with the suppliers, with the coating industry, and we want to make sure that we get the needs of the future from the ship owner.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothenburg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners, and welcome to episode 222. In this episode, I'm welcoming back a previous guest. His name is Philip Chaabane, and he is the CEO of itech. Philip was my guest in episode number 12. That was on November the 20th, 2015. So he was one of my early guests. He then represented a startup in the maritime industry, and for me to go and visit him inside the AstraZeneca building was a bit odd, but most exciting. Since then, we've seen each other in different settings, but we have never had the time to sit down and do a follow-up. When Philip and itech now are bringing the International Antifouling conference to Gothenburg, we decided it was time to do a follow-up. Can I say that I learned so much from my conversation with Philip? And I think you will do that too. Having said that, I will not go into details about coating, fouling, or anything in between. This is Philip Chaabane for you.
Every conversation matters.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast.
Thank you so much.
This is a guest who's coming back.
It's amazing to be back. It's many years since we last did this. I'm Philip Chaabane. I'm the CEO of itech, and I've been with the company for quite some time, even before the last time we did this pod, actually. So hanging in for endurance.
So Philip is one of the few people who has come back to the podcast, who I have invited again. You were guest number 12, and that was in November of 2015. So that's a long time ago, but people can go back and listen to that episode if they want to. What is itech?
So itech is this amazing small Swedish company that is spun out of the university research that went on way back, way before we did this last podcast, right? Even at the year of 2000, I think the first patent were filed. So it's really made it a long run from, basic research to applied research, and then public funding and private funding, and some major breakthroughs throughout the years with a commitment from customers, and most of all, recognition of the product's excellent features by the customers and by the end customers, and then the regulatory landscape. So all of that over the last 23 years have basically evolved to what we are today, which is then a global, exporting, Nasdaq-listed, profitable, growing Swedish tech company within the field of chemistry and biotechnology.
Why is that interesting for the shipping community?
I think there's maybe two I mean, you have to ask others, of course, but one of them is because this amazing journey coming through one of the most difficult industries to innovate in, maybe not shipping, but marine coatings. And we made it to show to others that everything is possible with some patience, some luck, and a good portion of hard work from talented people. That is one angle to it, right? I hope that inspires. And the other angle is the product's features itself. So we are a supplier, a proud supplier should be said, to these major coating manufacturers that ship owners daily speak to, I would assume, right? Selling anti-corrosion coatings or topside coatings, or in our case, antifouling coatings. And that is the key here. Antifouling coatings is important for the shipping industry. It's actually tremendously important because in the case you choose wrong, you get enormous extra fuel bills to take care of. And nowadays, that translates into higher emissions than what would be necessary, of course. So having the right coatings with the right power to actually resist marine growth is amazingly important, not the least when you start to talk CII and all those kind of different carbon dioxide incentive programs to try to improve. So we provide a small molecule that helps keep the hull cleaner in tougher conditions over a longer time frame than without.
And it's not toxic, it's a molecule.
It's a molecule. It is not metal-borne. All compounds we have learned in the industry of chemicals is obviously toxic at some point, even water, air, and beer, if you wish. It's about concentrations. In the use concentrations, it is not. It is, on the other hand, a very interesting mode of action. And that merits a small explanation, because for the first time ever, this research program actually focused on trying to repel things from a surface rather than being lethal in the mode of action, which has been the case in the many, many years since shipping actually started. And here we are with this mini molecule dosed in minimal quantities, and it's repellent. It actually pushes the target organism away, meaning in this case, the barnacle larvae. They can't settle, they swim away. And that is unique. That's why biotech comes in, because it stimulates a receptor behavior. And it's unique because of the way the molecule is integrated in the coatings, the small quantities, which allows paint makers to be a bit more creative than what they could be before.
And it happened by accident, I understand.
Yes, it did. It did. As most famous research programs, what was expected to happen maybe didn't happen, but something else did. And I think the researchers back in the days had one or two molecules to choose from, whereof this, from what I've heard, was maybe not the target one. It should probably not be the effect demonstrated that they actually picked up on, but it did. And that's not the only lucky step that the project took. So first of all, that it had this amazingly effect on the receptor, the octopamine receptor, right? Stimulating swimming behavior. Only to find that one molecule is very difficult. Secondly, it actually works in paints. We could be as creative as we wanted to on the molecule side, but the chances are slim that it also will stay in the coating or not pose any risks to the coating, and all the other industry challenges that we would have problem with all that. But as it has played out, it all worked out. It is contained in the film of the coating, right? It migrates properly. It is possible to deliver in the needed quantities in a safe way. And it passes through regulation, and it makes a difference for the performance. All of that is, the smallest of the needles in a huge haystack. We're very proud to have been coming back to your pod to actually show how we have progressed over the 23 years.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, and feel proud to be a Swede in this environment again.
Sweden innovates.
Yes, we do. So what was the biggest challenges at the beginning? Being a startup, because that is what you were last time we spoke.
The biggest challenge is belief and trust, right? That we are maybe as convinced as we are about what seems to work in our laboratories or in the test fields that we have an insight in. To translate that into customer belief is difficult. To get them to really believe that this makes a difference and that it's worth to update the business case of that specific product, or to take any other measures that are needed to actually adopt to new technology. To translate that, bridge that into confidence is really difficult. And as a startup, the same issue occurs on the financial side. We go nowhere without other people's money. That's also a huge proof of burden, right? To convince them that we are so firmly committed to making this work, and then explain to them, if it works, it will be on this grounds, and it will make this and this difference to the business, and it will have this kind of business case. Of course, we did a lot of wrong estimations all over the place, as everybody does. But now we're here, and I think we're actually beating expectations as we speak on the commercial side of it, and also being very, very happy to be a supplier on the R&D level to all big paint makers, on the commercial level to 6 of the what we call 9 biggest in the world.
Yeah, that's also very cool.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. You speak lead times and startup periods, right? If you go to Lindholmen here in Gothenburg, which we talked briefly about before, things go quicker. It's IT related. It's A lot of different development steps that are taken quicker than in normal industry. And on top of that, now we speak shipping and chemistry. Long proof times on ships, long regulatory times to get approved, and long discovery times. So yes, it's a different beast, but here we are.
Have you changed your vision for this along the way? You must have.
The company has definitely changed the vision a bit. We have never changed molecule or the purpose of what we are supposed to do, but the areas where it would work, the type of customer that likely would to take it up the first, all that proved completely different to what actually happened. Remember that at the time before actually we did the last podcast, the Volvo group were highly interested and invested actually, because they had a propeller coating challenge on their products. So it was clearly driven towards leisure boats and stern drives and that kind of protection area, what we call niche areas, but being leisure boats a bit quicker, assumingly, to get into. We have now proven that never happened. That's unfortunate, but it was very quickly seen that the market there is very small. The technical challenges are enormous with the high flows and the rotation of propeller blades and all that. So the whole project naturally started to evolve to these huge surface areas that are on ships, right? And when we started to know that there's a proven correlation between marine growth and fuel efficiency, which was coming from the industry in general, not from us. Michael Schultz of a famous researcher in this domain, and nowadays all the paint makers are very strong in correlating data to show that coatings make a difference. So that was a natural transition after all, right? That, okay, yeah, this is an interesting leisure boat industry. It's cool to talk about repelling things to a leisure boat owning. But then put the leisure boat next to a 400-meter container ship, you immediately see the business opportunities on a different side.
But are there only 6 paint companies in that?
So it is a very consolidated market on the marine coating side. If you ask anyone in the industry, I think they would refer to 6 big paint makers that would basically control 80% or so of this commercial shipping industry, should be said. And that is extremely consolidated. There's no room for anything else. And all of those 6 have been around for years. I think few of them have celebrated 100 years and 75 years.
And are they spread all over the world?
And are spread all over the world. And probably that makes the challenge, right? That shipping is requesting attendance all over the place. Meaning all the continents, most of the yards need to have some sort of coating representation. That the dominating countries need probably a local factory of coatings to be able to be on time and produce exact right coating for the right ship. And that puts an enormous barrier for someone else to come in, I'm assuming. For us, as an ingredient supplier, we operate from Gothenburg, and we operate from a supplier space in India, actually. And that serves the whole industry. But to your point, there's 6 doors to knock to make a breakthrough, and that will then make this fly even further than what it is today. The good point is that we're part of those 6 on an R&D level, and most of them are also on a commercial level. Then I said 6 of 9 paint makers initially, right? And we added a few to that list because there are some paint makers that are really big but very local, like local Korea, local Japan, local US. So including those 3, in addition to the 6, that basically makes up what's really interesting on the volume perspective. And that's commercial shipping.
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't know anything about coating and maybe my audience doesn't either. So now we're here to learn. What about the next step in your company? I think patents is very important. So how does that go about?
That's a very good question. This company was founded around patents, and a lot of the financing to the company was actually provided as we control the patent landscape to a certain extension at least. There's a unique opportunity provided by that patent landscape that we had. I also said that we were 23 years into the game, which means the first patents are already expired, and we just basically got to market, right? Fortunately enough, there's been complementary patents filed and approved that gives us certain protection, both in the production side and in the user end of things. So that helps us. And then as the industry has evolved, we have managed to create some sort of extra length in patents through collaborations. But it should be said that in this industry, patents is only part of the protection area. The regulatory landscape is almost far bigger and more important protection area, because it takes enormous amount of time to generate the files, the dossiers, the studies to submit a request for approval in EU as an example, or Korea or US or something, right? And those are exclusive in the sense that no one else can just ride on them when they expire or when they're renewed, right? It's not that after 20 years that regulatory approval expires and someone else can just take on. That doesn't happen. Everyone who supplies has to have a regulatory file in that region. And that took us 10 years of development to get the file in place, and took another 8 years for regulators to get it through their process. That's 18 years almost, right? We say 15 to 18 years, depends on how you look on it. So that protection is far greater actually on a global scale than the patents. Then there are regions that may be less protected by regulatory processes. But on the overall scheme, if the paint maker wants a global supplier, then that global supplier needs to control the regulatory dossiers in all its key markets. And that includes US, Europe, Japan, Korea, China. And if you're on the leisure boat or in a naval side, you also need probably other countries such as New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, which have a quite difficult and challenging regulatory landscape. But that's it. That's a protection area.
So what about the International Maritime Organization?
They push for having clean hulls as their first priority to commit to their CO2 requirements and incentives with the CI and EXI and everything else. That's their main priority. But on the chemical list, they also have a responsibility and have taken the responsibility over years. We all remember TBT as a super powerful ingredient in marine coatings, and ship captains and ship owners who's been here for long. They remember how clean the ships were, but they also remember the drawbacks when someone started to look what happened in the marine environment underneath these areas where a lot of these ships were laying for quite some time. So IMO took that responsibility to say, okay, this is unacceptable harm to nature. They actually blacklisted TBT, banned it, which is the only way to ban something completely global in this industry, as we all know. So in that sense, they take the responsibility. In addition to that, there's not much involvement from IMO on marine coatings so far, to my knowledge. Regions do care and do analyze coatings and ingredients much deeper than IMO, though. So maybe, if something comes up as an issue in a few different regions, that may end up on IMO level at some point. But as of today, it's TBT who is taken care of by IMO due to its very negative effects, proven negative effects.
Okay. Yeah, I think sometimes we think that IMO is regulating everything, but that is not their purpose. They are not responsible for things like that. But on the other side, the blue economy, everything in the ocean, everything in water. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I think IMO in this specific case has all the rights of relying on these different countries or regions who spend a lot of scientific research to regulate chemistry. It would be difficult for them to come in and start to look into chemistry because there's so many regulators doing that in these different regions of the world. So I think they're more looking for trends. If something goes wrong in many areas, they would put their eyes on it. But other than that, I think it's just trusting local authorities.
So what is the roadmap moving forward now for itech?
So for itech, we're first of all enjoying strong positive results after all these years of trying to find money and almost dying at least 3 times. And now we're sitting here with an interesting cash flow where, as I said, growing profit with high profitability. And being, 5 years into the NASDAQ stock listed domain, so to say, we listed ourselves 2018. I have been struggling a lot on, what's the risk on the cash flow side and, when do you need next financing and all that. And now we're here with a completely different question. So only on Monday, just after releasing the second quarter report, 2023, the questions were more on the direction, what are you going to do with all the cash? And that's, you almost laugh if you're me, because I've spent my years finding cash, trying to make this work in the first place. And this is the first, maybe, few quarters where we are getting pressure on trying to capitalize the assets we have, either by dividends to shareholders, of course, or other measures that could be put in place. So I would say it's a nice set of questions that we have.
Congratulations on that one.
Thank you so much.
But that's probably a new challenge.
It is a new challenge, but I'd rather have that than again going and find cash, I must say.
I understand that. But what is ahead of you?
Yeah, moving ahead is part of what we just talked about, is actually trying to see what interesting things can be done now when we have some room to operate more than just what we do. That is at least a potential opportunity, not saying that's a smart thing to do. And then it's also a lot of things to continue to work on in our industry space. I mean, we're still dominated, our top line is still dominated by 2 paint makers out of the 6 or out of the 9, depending on how you look on it. So a lot of work to make those others come on board, help. We spend a lot of investments now in trying to help the development of coatings containing our product Selektope, finding carrier systems, meaning finding ways to integrate the molecule better, cheaper, more efficient into the coating systems or into new coating systems, right? Like silicones is being part of the agenda now more than before. How would we possibly enable that transition, right? So we have to do our work in helping out. So that's focus, maintaining regulatory approvals and assuring that we stay on floating on that side when they always try to stringent their regulations even further. And we try to put the industry together in an innovative, collaborative mode. And we're trying to take the leadership in this, actually. I must say that was also by coincidence, as the finding of Selektope was coincidence, and it followed from being isolated after COVID and saying nobody's speaking to each other. And we find out that we have things to talk about, but we also want to see what others are doing, right? Without going into industry secrets, of course. So we took the initiative last year to through an Antifouling conference with the purpose of getting R&D specialists together, those who really make the difference in the chemical side, right? Who can adapt to a request from a ship owner that the coating does not work in these circumstances, or it could be better combined with cleaning or whatever it would be, right? We need to get the industry together to talk, at least on a general level. What does the supplier do, right? What assets and what knowledge are they sitting on? Because we do R&D here. You just saw our new laboratory, right? And the other suppliers, they also have laboratories. Something is coming out of all that if you put the pieces together, likely are quite helpful pieces of the complete puzzle. We want to help to lay the puzzle in a little bit more of a collaborative way with the suppliers, with the coating industry, and we want to make sure that we get the needs of the future from the ship owner, right? So in this specific conference that is taking place 2 weeks from now, we are getting representation from all paint makers, all places of the world, most of the prominent universities, and a few of those big ship owners. Some of them are local here, right? Stena Bulk and Stena Technique are on it, and they will try to help to convey how they would like to see coating the market develop. Maybe not the market, technology, I should say. We have Stolt-Nielsen here. We have Hapag-Lloyd, and there are many, many more should be said. But at least we get a small input from them on what they see, how they experience the coatings to perform. And we're not going to go into that product performs better than that. It's not at all what we're saying. We want to see the trends, right? Are we going the right direction? How much trading is being shifted to low speed, or are there differences in route optimization that ends up being anchored or passing through waters with higher fouling pressure and so on? Do we need to manage that on an R&D perspective in the coating? So that input is very important. And then most of the time is, of course, to listen to what innovators are doing in the labs of the chemical firms.
And they are all coming to Gothenburg.
Yeah, and that's amazing, isn't it? We got over 150 people now in Gothenburg. Some of them, of course, always living in Gothenburg, but many of those traveling into Gothenburg. We have representation from the biggest yards in Korea. We have, as I said, all these paint makers, and there are some of them Asian and US driven, right? So they are flying in here. So Gothenburg is on the map. And together with RISE, we for the second year now do this, and it's growing. I'm proud to be part of that, to bring knowledge to Gothenburg in an area which not so many really care about, or at least don't know about. And here we are, putting Gothenburg on the map. Again.
Yeah. Proud again to be a Gothenburger, and whatever you say. So we are in your office now. How do you recruit people to your company?
So this is a ever ongoing challenge and a task for me, of course, as a leader, but also for my colleagues to continuously scout and be creative. We are trying to be proactive in the sense that we build networks in generally, right? And not that we're trying to steal people from other companies, but we learn of names, we learn of universities, we learn of things that could be good to know about when you try to scout people. Then, of course, we're not the company, consuming or recruiting the most amount of people, because this business model is very scalable from where it is. With our 13 to 14 people, some of those consultants should be said, we operate very smoothly. But when we do recruit, first of all, gender equality is super important for us. We are 50-50 now. Age difference is important. We need the experience from those who have worked almost their full working life. So we have a few employees in that end. And as you met a few this morning, a few that fresh baked from university. And I think the dynamics of that is important. And there's one more thing I want to say here. Internationalism is important for us. So we have people with Indian origin. We have in German origin. We have British. We have Vietnamese origin. We have a mix of different cultures that also have different perspective and ways of contributing to discussion. So being very small, we still have this philosophy that helps, right? And if we recruit, we have to find what piece of all that, in addition to the real academic competence or work experience we need.
So what is the background of the people here working? Are they all chemists?
Yeah, all of them are better than me to start with on most tasks. So that's a good success in the recruitment, but maybe not the highest hurdle to achieve either. but we have a high academic level of, as it normally comes that way in chemistry. PhD level is it's not a prerequisite, but normally they show up. They like to research. So we have a few of those, both in the chemistry area, but also in the marine biology side. And then, of course, other areas are not requesting or not even close to being needing to have a PhD, right? There we have different academic level, or sometimes no academic level if, it's not really important everywhere. So we try to keep the mix. But yes, we're very PhD focused when it comes to technical and biological aspects of it, expert driven, if you wish. And then more creative, or more mixed academic backgrounds.
I was thinking about sort of a ship owner, maybe it's recruiting some people with another background. And this is where you are recruiting people from the academia and chemistry, as you said.
That's very true. And as I said, also other areas will probably be fruitful now when we come through the most intense startup phase, if you wish, which is by nature quite scientifically driven. Now it's probably a company that would pay more attention to someone who has actually worked in other industries in the shipping industry, either as a supplier or actually been working with coatings on the ship owner side. They would then not come into the R&D side as much as they would on technical marketing or leadership position, right? So I think now we're in a position where we actually could look a bit broader and to more different profiles if we come across that need, so to say. Up for a job, Lena?
Yeah, sure. Maybe you need a podcaster. Communication. Yeah, that's me. So where do you see progress in this industry? I mean, I'm thinking about the coating. Is that driven from Asia or from the US? Or where do we...
The coating companies are mostly European and Asian. Those dominate the industry. And a few are very close to us in Sweden, right? In Denmark, Norway, of course. UK, Holland are representing countries for a few of these very big leading companies. And in addition, you have Korea, Japan mainly. And I think they drive the discussion from different angles. The Asians are more technically loyal, so to say, in the sense that they believe a lot in their technology, and they are quite aggressive, if you wish, on patents. They like what they do, and they believe in the science and in the technical work, right? And not so much in marketing or convincing people by marketing tools. On the other side of the coin, you have the European and US or Western oriented, if you wish, in that way, that are also having obviously strong technical background, but has a completely different marketing budget, or trying to make the end customer understand the correlations on why is it worth to pay that much for a certain product. Well, it's because you get this back, because you have this correlation to fuel performance or to niche area fouling or whatever it is, right? So we see it driven, it's driven from two ends. A lot of technical inventions are from the Asian side, and then you apply technical marketing and from the other side, and that becomes a total mix that altogether helps move the industry forward. But it's very limited to a few number of players.
It's so interesting. And then I think about the political side of all of this, because we all want to become more sustainable. Every company in the maritime industry wants to become more sustainable. And in a way, I understand that your product is doing that.
It certainly is from different perspectives. One is, of course, the overall arching sustainability argument in the industry is to help reduce CO2 emissions from a ship to air, right? And that is done by many different technologies. And you have probably interviewed most of those who are promising, I would assume. We are part of the technology base under the waterline, because that's also important. Someone said it's 5 to 25% saving opportunity depending on what ship you compare with and what trade route and all that. But it's a saving potential. So we need to do our utmost together with these colleagues in the industry, which are gathering in this conference again, then, to help make the coatings even better. Can we resist fouling marine growth even further? Even stronger, in a more reliable and predictable way? All those are the central questions on the top level of sustainability argument, should be said. One step down, it's also about trying to reduce emissions to sea, right? Trying to reduce the leaching of chemicals altogether. Whatever chemical there is, we need to try to reduce it and not use more than needed. And with Selektope's enormously small quantities, it is part of that toolbox to see if we can optimize together with the industry chemical compositions altogether, not only biocide level, but the whole thing, right? If less things out, the better it is if we can maintain performance or even improve it. The number of ingredients to choose from is another interesting aspect in this industry. Speaking of politics, throughout the years, I think it's gone from like 40 plus different agents, biocides and so on, and we're down to less than 10, maybe even less than 7. So all of us need to dock in together here and together help each other move forward in the development phase of this to help optimize things, to reduce what's leached out to the water, but also maintain performance, increase performance, and reduce emissions to air. So emissions to air and sea are very essential words in our office. So I think those are the main things that we contribute with in the sustainability arguments. Then, as we spoke IMO before, right? There's a forum called Glow Fouling. They initially at least focused on niche areas, sustainability in a different dimension, because niche areas are very difficult to protect from fouling. And if you get fouling, you may have some mechanical issues in the engine room and so on, maybe because of water flows are clogged. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the risks that those actually carry alien species that could be invasive species. And in Sweden, we have a lot of problems with that. And I'm sure others do as well. That's sustainability in a different dimension. That's clearly linked to coatings. And I think you recall that there were some articles flowing around in January this year, 2023, where a cruise ship were denied port entry at several ports in Australia, New Zealand, I believe it was, because it was too fouled. Not that it mattered from a maneuverability perspective, I don't think at least, but from a risk of actually bringing in alien species to Australian waters. That ended up in a disaster, of course, because passengers didn't get their promised delivery of being able to visit different cities in the coastline. They were also stuck on a ship for some time out in the oceans before someone could clean it off and, in a contained way and do all that. It was a very good example of another dimension of the importance of a marine coating. It needs to be applied in the correct way. It needs to be selected in the right way. And we need to continue to innovate so it has the best possible predictable power. And then it works.
I was so happy that you explained this to me. I don't think many people have realized the importance of this in that way. You might think so because you meet the people who knows everything. But people in general, not even people in the small maritime space, but people outside our own bubble don't know this.
Yeah. And then let's hope to listen to the pod and many other presentations by others in this context. But I would say that I think, you're right. First of all, it is a niche industry. It's a niche issue for a ship owner compared to many other things they have to deal with. But then again, regarding this alien species, there was a lot of publicity from ballast water and ballast water treatment. That, by the way, became an IMO regulation, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And this may go the same direction at the end. But ballast water management was driven by the same problem. Now that is probably solved. I know probably a bunch of ships that yet need to get equipment installed and so on. But from a regulatory standpoint and from a vast fleet perspective, I think it's a managed problem as of today. This one is still under discussion and under development, certainly in the niche areas. So I think people kind of forgot, and they certainly don't make the correlation that it's also the coating. They were probably happy with ballast water treatment being dealt with. Now we don't need to think about that, but oops, here we are. We have also a correlation between fouling on ships and the transportation risk of invasive species.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Lena. It's great to be here again.
Yeah, and I think maybe a follow-up in 5 more years or something like that.
Let's see where we are then.
Yeah, I've only promised to continue for 2 more years because then I've done 10 years of this.
So we do extended versions after your retirement in this
we can do
industry.
That. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Every conversation matters.
Thank you, Philip, for this candid conversation. You make me feel proud to be in the maritime space and also to be someone from Gothenburg. I would go to that international anti-fouling conference, equipped with my microphone to see if there is anything else to learn. Did you know that there is a World Coating Council? I will see if I can find out more about them. So that's all for now. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.